Hi, hello, and welcome to our webinar with our partner Jedox. Today we want to talk about S&OP, how to boost your profits with integrated and collaborative planning. Before we start, let me quickly introduce the lineup for today. With me, I've got Jack from Jedox. He's Solution Advisory Manager and is based in the UK. Then we've got my colleague Leo, who's one of our consultants, senior consultant at BDG. So he'll be showing you a bit of a demo today around S&OP. So he's got lots of experience in building those solutions with Jedox. And myself, I'm Christian. I'm the managing partner at BDG. So I've been working with Jedox and in this space of planning, reporting, analytics for about 20 years now. So yeah, we're looking forward to talking to you about these topics today. Before we start, just a couple of points on housekeeping. So all participants are muted. So if you want to ask us questions, please feel free. There is a questions window. We will answer questions at the end of the webinar. Obviously, for reasons of time, we want to keep this crisp and quick. We may not be able to get around to answering all the questions. So we will collect them and we may just revert back to you afterwards, but we will certainly get around to all the questions. So please feel free to ask questions on the topic, on Jedox, or anything else that you might be interested in. Also, we're going to take the video stream offline so you can focus on the slide and on the screen for the rest of this webinar. And now we're going to take a quick look at the agenda for today. So we want to talk to you about the move from FP&A to xP&A, so external planning and analysis across different departments, especially with a focus, of course, on S&OP, on the bill of material, and how all of that can streamline sales and demand and purchasing planning. And we'll also talk a little bit around data integration. And ultimately, at the end, we're going to show you a case study of what all of this can look like so you can get a bit of a feel for a real-life example. But before we go into it, in case you don't know Jedox or BDG, maybe just a quick introduction on that. Maybe, Jack, do you want to say a few words on Jedox?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Christian. And just want to say, it's a pleasure to come onto this webinar with you today. For those that haven't come across Jedox before, Jedox is a highly adaptable, scalable EPM platform. So we're not just focused on FP&A or just S&OP, but really, as you said, Christian, across every different department in the company to really bring automation, remove the silos between departmental planning and help our customers make better decisions with regards to their planning and analytics.
Excellent, and that's actually a very nice bridge back to us, almost as if we planned it. So BDG stands for Better Decisions Group. So it really does what it says on the tin in that respect. We are very much in the business of developing solutions for better decision making, which are data-driven decisions these days, as we all know. And we have been partners with Jedox since 2008. So we are proud to say that we are the oldest Jedox partner and actually also one of the largest as well. So we have a very good, strong working relationship with Jedox. BDG operates in several countries, obviously here in the UK as well. And we have several focus areas, manufacturing being one of those industries in which, of course, S&OP is very relevant, but not just in manufacturing. Obviously, S&OP is very much a topic that is relevant in different industries and across different businesses. So we see that being more and more relevant and more customers exploring how they can streamline their processes and again integrate with other areas, especially in that field. So we've done that with Jedox several times, and we want to highlight that today a little bit. So with that, I'll hand over back to you, Jack.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Christian. I'm just going to touch a little bit here on really what we mean with xP&A and what that means for different organizations before I do a very brief overview, say highlights demo of Jedox to give everyone a little bit of an understanding of what our software is all about. But firstly, as I mentioned before, Jedox is catering for planning and analysis processes right across the organization. So we're offering a platform which is really allowing our customers to start off in one function or domain of their business, or really where they have the biggest challenge, but also to scale those planning processes and use the solution right across their organization. So as you do that, you really move out of what is traditionally starting in the finance department with FP&A, moving across different divisions or functions or different lines of business to add incremental value across the company. And the more functions and the more processes that you actually connect together in one platform really helps you to understand what drivers and how those drivers impact different parts of the business. And if we think of that in a slight S&OP lens, if we look at how our sales plan is impacting our demand and therefore our supply chain and production, that's a typical driver that we want to link together. But we can also then really understand, what does that production capacity or production facility mean for our workforce or for our procurement and so on. So xP&A, extended planning and analytics, is really about bringing those capabilities together, unifying data from a financial perspective as well as an operational perspective across the company, and breaking down the silos that you typically see between different functions where they're trying to do their own functional plan, but also trying to provide an input into the overall organization. And then on the financial side, that finance team really trying to understand those inputs from an operational perspective and what that means for the future performance financially of the company. So what I'd like to do is go through a few minutes, just an overview of the Jedox solution, not specifically looking at S&OP, and then I'll hand it back over to you, Christian and Leo. So I'm going to look at Jedox here from a couple of different lenses. One more from a C-level, interested in really the overall performance of the company and how those different data points from an operational perspective come together and help me to make different decisions. Before I look at slightly more operational process as a typical planner, how I could actually feed in and contribute to that process. So within Jedox here, I'm looking now at my overview dashboard of the entire company. I can see different KPIs and different performance metrics here from sales and a revenue perspective, but I could also look between different departments and different functions of my company, including production. So simply just looking at different data points together and how they can actually connect in one environment. But let's drill down into the sales or demand area. And really what we can do in the platform in Jedox, bringing that data together, is not just take data into insights as we can see here, but start to use Jedox as what we call a digital business partner and really start to help companies make better decisions in the platform. So as I come now into a more operational dashboarding view, I can see sales and demand information over time and across many different parameters that I want to understand in the company here. So we can see across the top number of different areas I could filter on. If that's different geographies, different products, and so on and so forth, I could drill into also different customer views here. And let's take a focus on Europe. So I can look across any different calculations that Jedox is showing me and is calculating in real time in the platform, right down to a detailed level of information to really understand variances as we go through the year ahead. What we want to do is also automate a lot of manual functions that companies are doing. So those manual tasks, so bringing data into the platform, and Christian, you alluded to this a little bit earlier. Bringing data into planning and analytics process is usually quite manually intensive. Pulling that out of an ERP system and structuring that in a way that they can initiate a planning process takes some time. With Jedox, we completely automate this with our integration. But it's really taking then that time that the business has back into making better decisions. So how do you do that? You're really taking data to insights into decisions is, well, let's understand now bigger amount of data and operational data we can join together to understand a bit more insights into that. We want to bring as well AI capabilities on top of that, and we can have a look here at some GenAI capabilities, even to help us with the commentary and the narrative. So here we've written, can we write an executive summary based on the data that we see? And we can actually use GenAI to automate that narrative for us. And that's really best when we've got GenAI capabilities along with a human planner to not just reduce the amount of time it takes to write up the narrative, but really understand where there's trends or where there's anomalies in the data that the human might not have recognized. And then human can also dig into that a little bit deeper and really provide much more valuable input around the data that they're showing. So here we look at a brief example from a sales or demand view, but of course, this is one aspect of the company that ultimately comes into a financial perspective. So we want to bring all of those operational sub-plans together and understand the impacts on the financial health of the company. So we come to a P&L here, we can already see a few different planning versions, not just actual data in the first column, but forecast and budget information. So we can bring those different versions together. And we could also then very easily in platform of Jedox plan different scenarios, a worst case, a best case, a revision of our budgets and so on. So we can really actually start to compare different scenarios together to help us take those better decisions and bring the collaboration across different functions and bring those sub-plans together under one umbrella into the P&L. But let's switch hats. Let's take a view into Jedox as one of those planners planning some demand for our customers out in the organization. So we have a number of planning tasks, and we're going to jump into our bottom-up demand plan, where we can look at some units and unit price planning by product and by customer. So we start off with 0 in our budget here, which is our budget for 2025. And not only can we very easily use some planning baselines like last year's information or our latest forecast, but we can actually predict the budget for us. So if I choose the predict demand for 2025, what that's going to do is use a few different drivers, such as the historical actuals that we have in the organization, along with some other business drivers that impact the accuracy of our forecast. So that could be external drivers, such as raw material prices that are in the market or population demographics, as well as internal drivers that we have defined too. So that really helps increase the accuracy of our forecasting, but it also helps transform the planning process from a periodic forecast or budget cycle into more of a continuous plan, which can be automated. Jedox also allows us to plan at different levels. So we could drill down to a specific SKU or product, and we can plan really bottom up for a specific period on a specific product if we wanted to, just here, and change our demand to 5,000 in May. And this is going to automatically aggregate across the entire demand of our company. So here we're planning for one customer or for one region and one product. But if we've got a number of different planning collaborators, this is going to automatically aggregate up to our total company demand instantly and in real time. So this really removes the effort needed from the planning functions to chase up those planners for their contributions, bring those together, usually pull that into one Excel file if they're using Excel, and try and aggregate that together to understand their total demand, where there's typically some errors made in that process as well. It's now completely automated and is real-time aggregated in Jedox. We can also plan top-down here. So if we wanted to take some more assumptions and plan a total value of 50,000 in the month, Jedox will actually allocate that down to an individual product level as well. So it really makes it easy to plan and give us the best of both worlds here in the planning view of Jedox. Now, as a planner, we want to really add some governance around our process. And once we're happy with our demand plan here, we can submit it back to the rest of the organization. We can add some commentary into our process, and we can actually engage in that collaborative planning approach and push that back to the rest of the organization to say we've completed our plan and that we can no longer edit that, and actually really helps speed up the process and adds integrity and trust into that planning process too. So just to finish off, as we come back to our profit and loss, you can see now how this is impacting our financials. So looking into some demand and some pricing and how that's automatically flowing through right to our overall company level into our P&L for our budget for 2025 that we can see on the right-hand column. And this is an example of how we can automate much of the tasks typically done to free up time in the planning process, also collaborate with different planning users in one platform, but also integrate those different sub-plans, including S&OP processes, together to give the business the ability to plan simulations, to understand the impact of various functions and departments on each other. But with that, I'll hand back over to you, Christian and Leo, to take us a little bit deeper onto the S&OP topic.
Thank you, Jack. That's been very helpful. We're going to see Jedox again in a minute, and you're going to see how versatile Jedox can be, not just from the functionality, but also obviously in the way it looks. You may see that this green-yellow color at BDG, we like it. So you're going to see a bit more of that in a minute. So just an overview of, then again, we're talking versatility, we're talking integration of different areas. So this is obviously just an example, again, of a few key functions in the business. Obviously, the finance function, very central, and often where sort of different streams of work and planning and analytics processes converge. But then obviously you've got, very important, you've got the aspect of people, the HR department. You've got the operations area, clearly for the topic of S&OP, rather an important one, and sales. But obviously there's others as well. These are all connected. We like this image of the honeycombs because if you now see exactly, thank you, you can see that it's all connected. And so the idea, of course, is that Jedox can take you on that journey, but because it's all modular, so all of these honeycombs are individual modules, and you'll see aspects of some of them in a minute, and you have seen some of that from what Jack's just shown you. The beauty of it is that once you have the platform, you can, of course, add these modules sequentially, and you can start small, and then the beauty is, of course, it can take you wherever you need to go. And as we've just found out, AI is obviously included, so it can take you right up to the cutting edge of technology when it comes to all your planning, reporting, and analytics needs to make, ultimately, better decisions. So what we have done is, rather than reinvent the wheel every single time, we have taken sort of an approach that we call BDG1. And BDG1 basically means that we take sort of 80% solution of stuff that is recurring. That's things like workflow, like accounts, charts of accounts, like bill of materials, like user security, like planning processes, and so on and so forth, that is going to be recurring and that is going to be relevant and consistent across different industries, across different businesses, across different size of businesses. So we have put all of that into a pre-built solution, which we call BDG1. So there's BDG1 Finance, BDG1 S&OP, BDG1 People. And obviously the beauty of Jedox is that then the remaining 15-20% that are company specific, those you can then put in very, very flexibly with the flexibility that Jedox gives you as a platform. So therefore, you get the best of both worlds. You don't have to start from scratch. You get an 80% solution that's already there, but obviously you get the full flexibility for the last remaining bits. And I think that's really, really quite an important message, because it saves massive amounts of time, of course, and of money ultimately, but it also gives you a flavor of some best practices in the market that obviously help to get the process started. So what we've done with BDG is that we have looked at some of these modules, and this is an overview of the S&OP process. So don't worry, I'm not going to go into too much detail in all of this. Obviously, please feel free to have to ask questions. But basically, again, this is more like a process flow through the solutions and the different modules. So rather than them just being sort of connected with each other as honeycombs, you can see what a process flow would look like. Obviously, typically you would start with a demand plan. The demand plan, again, would be informed by lots of inputs, like bottom-up inputs, like customer conversations, customer plans, by item, by product, even if you need to. And we've seen some of that earlier, and we'll see some of that in a minute. Obviously, there's other data sources, more top-down, where you have maybe market conversations, you might have analysts, you might have more macroeconomical data, and other assessments like that. But obviously, all of that then flows into a demand plan. Demand plan is, again, informed by, you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, by various data sources, internal and external. This leads to purchase plans, logistics plans, production plans. As one of our first customers, he liked to say, everything's connected with everything. That, unfortunately, is the complexity of real-life situations. And you are no doubt aware that, obviously, in businesses, there is a lot of complexity, but it can, of course, be broken down bit by bit into different modules. Again, ultimately, it will converge in the financial plan that you can see on the right-hand side there. Like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on this. The only thing before we go any further is what I would just like to point out is what we have is We have, obviously, I mentioned that we have been partners with Jedox since 2008, so we have done a very large number of projects in this space, especially when it comes to the financial planning, when it comes to the HR planning, when it comes to the S&OP manufacturing side of things. Although, again, very important to note, S&OP is obviously not a topic just for manufacturing. That's just where I think most businesses sort of first woke up to that, but obviously it's relevant across lots of different industries as well. So just to recap then, before I'm going to shut up and hand over to my colleague Leo. So obviously S&OP, why is it so important? Well, obviously operations planning has a major impact on results. In other words, an integrated S&OP process offers the most powerful potential for optimizing your working capital and ultimately, therefore, your margins. And just to reiterate, it's not just in manufacturing, it's obviously in different industries. It's also around in retail and energy. We see this across lots of different industries. So with that, I'm going to hand over back to Leo. So we're going to see another demo. And afterwards we'll take some questions. Leo, over to you.
Thank you, Christian. So I'll share my screen. So let's go on to the demos. And of course, the numbers are made up. And even though the companies might sound familiar to you. So as Christian already said, we start from the demand side. And here within our sales module, we'll start with the customer overview. And that's basically what a planner would see when he logs in. So on the left side, we have a few filters. So it's not only for the plan itself, but also for the department lead or for the whole company lead, as everything on this template is completely dynamically aggregated on whatever filter you set on the left. And next to the filters, we basically have a short overview of my currently employees. So Mats, for example, has Nestle as a top customer in his company, in his quantity sales for the last 6 months, and also in his CM. And then we got to the basically core of the template. So we've got the KPI selection. So in here we get an overview of Mats' whole customers. So how much did he sell? How much did he plan? Whatsoever. So for example, within quantity for the last 6 months he sold, he has a order backlog of 437,000, whatever. And we compared it to the forecast that we set up earlier this year. And compared to the forecast, we got the minus 25%. And down here within the sheet, we actually see where these minus 25% come from. So we got actually in a selection of different customers. So we've got Nestle over here, Arcona, London, Saronen. So we basically have an overview of where we come short in our current order backlog compared to our forecast. And basically what this template does is essentially a call to action to our employee, so that he says where we fall short for a specific customer and where his most attention is needed. So for example, for Mats, it's basically Nestle, as we are only 30% down in the comparison to last year, but in total, it's over nearly 33 tons. So we would go over to Nestle or any other customer, so to say, to basically get to action. What you can also do over these KPIs is basically change the picture down there. So you can click and say, okay, I want to show the quantity forecast versus previous year. I can also see the best case, for example. Here we actually overperformed Nestle comparing to last year. And then we go back to the order backlog. And basically what you can do is go on with Arcona, for example, and go to the next slide, or next template. So here within the customer details, we basically have the same idea. So it's basically a call to action. We now have filtered our customer to a corner. It's basically the same picture. So we've got the navigation. We have top 10 articles in this case, as we already selected the customer. We've got our KPIs, and we've got an article overview for Arcona. So we see where we get short in terms of, in this case, also backlog versus forecast. We've got a small overview of customer details. So, for example, Arcona is located in Liechtenstein, and we've got a short overview over our plans in the past. And after that, we can say, okay, I've got a bit short of corn for the corner. So basically what I want to plan is, or what I want to actualize is the corn planning for corner. So I got the same thing. I just can click here on corn and I got to the article details. And this page is actually already the planning page. So here we are basically at Hilkona with the article we selected, so the corn, and we can basically make inputs like Jack already demoed earlier. So what we actually plan here is 3 things. So we plan the quantity, the sales price, and the contribution margin. And we can also just do an input of, for example, 5K in January. So we've got an additional forecast here for January planned. What you can also do, what is nice really about Jedox, is what also Jack showed previously. We can go to May year to go, and we can say, okay, I want to say I gonna plan 20,000. So that's gonna be distributed to the year to go. What you can also do, like Jack showed previously, is that we can go on a slide or cell, and we can actually call the planning assistant. And here we can also say, I want to have a linear regression, I want to copy, I want to have like. So basically what we're going to do within linear regression is we're going to see the values of September and November for 2024, and we're going to actually forecast the values of January. So I'm going to go in and select September and November. Going to do, and also October, and I'm going to go to execute, and basically and now I've got the forecast for January. So minus is not that well within sales, but it shows the functionality of Jedox in that sense. What you also see here is that like the 30,000 has another grade of yellow compared to the 0 or to the other values here. That actually shows an input. So we've in this application where we already used for a customer, we've got a differentiation between actual user input and input from the system. So we differentiate between the contracts that all come from the data warehouse and actual data input. So that when you get a contract, or you change from a value plan to an actual contract, that you don't have to actualize every number by yourself. That's actually actualized directly within the system.
Leo, just a question here. I really like this view of if Jedox has generated the number for you, or if that's actually come from a planner itself. Thinking about different planning inputs from a number of different contributors, but what can we understand in Jedox in terms of who's made certain entries and at what time they've done that?
Actually, within this case, we are tracking the inputs. So when we go forward to the planning status, we are actually tracking the time any user made an input on a specific cell. And here we've got basically an overview over all inputs over Mats customers. So we have an overview over the planning status. So to differentiate between what is actually an input by a human, in that case Mats, or what is an input on an actual contract made by the data warehouse. And how actual are actually my data within the system, and how reliable are my numbers. So for example, I've got to see that within the last 2 months, I've got an updated revenue of nearly 70%. So I can say that my numbers are fairly secure in that sense. And the longer I go into the past, so if I set a threshold of 6 months, that means that my numbers are not older than 6 months. I actually got an increase over my revenue calculation. 12 months is nearly all sales are actually actualized, or they have been actualized within the past month. I've also have a nice view over the updated revenue. So within the customer or within the sales employee, I've got a differentiation between different customers. So I've got my A customers who are really important, my B customers who are less important, and my C customers who are the least important. and I get an overview over how actualized are my numbers for my different customer groups. It can also be very flexible for other applications. Within here, I've got also an overview over my planned revenue and my recorded revenue, and that's basically it for that page.
No, that's really nice, Leo. Thanks for highlighting that. I think that's as we come really and use the technology more and more to even have that visibility and understand what's valuable in terms of where the data's come from as well is really important to maintain. Thanks.
So let's move over to the procurement side. So in here, you've got basically the same view as for the sales view, but we only focus on products. And it's also calls for action. And down here, we've got an overview of different products we are currently short of. So for example, for the peanut oil, we are short over the next 3 months over nearly 30,000. And that's basically calls for action for the procurement guy to actually buy peanut oil in that sense. Also, we can see the distribution that we are short on May by 4,000, in June by 12,000, and so forth. So what we can try to do, for example, is to move our order from September forwards so that we actually get rid of my shortcoming over the next 6 months. We can also be pretty flexible about that, so we can change the time period from 6 months to 12 months or the other way around. We can also change the different grades of availability. So we are currently in availability grade 1, we are calling that. So it's basically the current order backlog versus the order backlog from procurement. So basically no planning in that sense. We can go to availability grade 2, which also counts the warehouse stock into account, or we can also go to the availability grade 3, which sets the current order and all stocks levels. So it's warehouse and currently products that are on delivery. Within here, we can also just click on a specific product and basically jump to the next slide.
So Leo, just a quick one before you move on. I'm a big believer in leading the people to where they need to be. So management by exceptions and where they need to look at. And obviously this is done here very nicely in a very visual way. I think sometimes it's quite helpful if we can notify people that are not actively in the system right now, but actually they get a notification outside of Jedox to then be being driven to where they need to be. Is that something we can do as well?
For example, you can define a threshold of maybe 100,000 for the next 3 months, and by that margin, you can send an email of whatever availability grade you want to set to each purchaser that is actually responsible for different products. You can also go to send a mail direct to the manager. That's also completely possible. So no need to directly log in and actually see the graphics. That can also be completely done by notification.
Yeah, that's a great example of this integration that we might have mentioned once or twice, which actually is also even outside of the system. So yeah, it's very helpful. Thank you.
So the procurement planning page is actually pretty much the same as for the sales page, although it looks a bit more frightening and a bit more colorful and a bit more lines to go after. But it actually comes down to the same. So at the top, we've got the navigation, we've got a few information by graphics, we've got 10 clients, we've got the availability grade from the first page. And down here, we've actually got the planning overview. Short notice to how it's set up in terms of article structure. In here, we've got, for example, for once, a master article and a simple article. So a master article actually consists of different articles. You can think of the articles as different substitutes that actually make up the master article. But in the end, what's important for the purchaser is especially the demand on the master article, not specifically on the article. So within here, I've got my sales volume over my whole master article. and I've got my sales quantity and forecast order backlog. So I essentially see what is actually contracted within those numbers and what is purely done by input from the sales, so I can differentiate how relevant the different numbers are and how I need to change them. And down here, we've actually got to see the whole input from the purchase itself. So we've got an order stock, we've got a stock, and we've got an inflow. So all these numbers come up to the purchaser as information that you can use to actually plan the mass article itself. And down here, we go down from the mass article to the article. That's actually the purchaser is going to purchase. We've got the same numbers as for the mass article, but coming down to the mass article. So in here, we currently have no supplier, and we can go on here to actually add a new supplier to the page. And now we can put in a new number for a supplier. For example, for November, we can go with 5K. And now we've actually planned for Beacon that he's going to supply 5K in November of my specific article, of my specific oil. And I can also have a different point of view. For example, if I click on a specific month, I actually am able to see my distribution from the sales point of view. So in here, I've got my mass article, and around the mass article, I can actually see where my demand is coming from. So for example, I've got plenty of demand coming from demand from department ALO 2510. So I can drill down to 2510 and basically see where my demand is coming from there. So if for example, I've got Aldisuit as a customer here, and Aldisuit is essentially eager to buying this specific oil, but also other oils. And I can drill down to Aldi and see the specific distribution there. And what this ensures is actually communication between procurement and sales. So for example, if I got especially in November, if I'm actually short of a specific oil, I can go down to this overview, this graph, and talk to a specific salesperson and ask him maybe to move the order from the customer around, or any other measures that can be taken.
So is that basically like a visual bomb in a way?
It's kind of a visual, yeah, kind of visual bomb, but mainly for drill down reasons. So essentially, you can see not how the product is combined or produced, but actually where my demand is coming from. Like that's the pure idea.
Okay, because I really like that diagram. I think that contains a lot of information. I think that's great.
So as we also already talked about the connection to other platforms, and probably the question arises how we get the data from sales to procurement and how we get the BOM. Let's move on to how actually data is integrated with Jedox. Within here, we've got a short example of the integrator and how we actually load the BOM within our system. It's a fairly simple example, but it can go easy as that. So actually what we have here is our ETL, as it's called. We've got an extract, we've got a transform, we've got a load of, in this case, a simple SQL database. And we can actually call different aspects from different tables, transform them, and then load them into the system. For the BOM itself, what we actually need is, for once, the articles, and for second, the relationship between the different articles. So how much one article is consistent of another one. And that actually leads to a different dimension, we call it in Jedox, where we can actually see a hierarchy of products. So for example, I've got selected this product, so the 65670. I can plan that, so that's basically a sales article, and I can plan that, and I want to see how that actually inputs or affects my procurement article, which is 82600. So, for example, I've got an input of 1 for 65670, and I've got a weight distribution here of 1.9, and I know that I need 1.9 articles of 38027 to actually produce one of the 65670. And the other way around, I can go and say, okay, from the 38027, I need 0.1998 from the 6700. And Jedox actually aggregates based on these rates how much my input of my base article actually affects my procurement article. And this can go down as far as possible. So steps of 10 is not an issue, steps of 20 is not an issue. Can really go down into complex forms in that sense. And with that, I would go back to Christian.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leo. That's been very helpful. I appreciate that. Obviously, that's a lot of information in a very short space of time. So please feel free to ask questions. Also, obviously, at the end of the webinar or after the webinar, as no doubt you will be thinking about this intensively for the rest of the day, please feel free to ask us questions if anything comes up at a later stage. We're obviously here for you. So I think with that, no webinar is complete without a very short advertising block. So we just wanted to show you a few sort of customers that we as BDG are working with Jedox, of course, have worked or currently working with, where some of these concepts that you've seen today are either in place, obviously we are working on them. And with that, I think I would like to then get to those questions that we've mentioned a few times. We've had a few. We won't be able to get through all of them. I think we probably have time for sort of a couple of questions, so we'll see how we get on. But like we said, we will get around to all of them, and we will just contact you afterwards. So I have a couple of questions here. Maybe one for you, Jack. So there was a question on ERP system integration. So the question is, do you have special connectors to integrate with typical ERP systems?
Yeah, thanks, Christian. And we do absolutely. I'd say the Jedox integrator, as we call it, is a big strength of our platform. The integration and the complexity around bringing lots of different data sources together and handling some of the transformation and logic that often needs to happen with that complex system environment can be done in the platform. And to support that, we do offer a number of dedicated connectors to a variety of source systems like SAP ERP systems or different databases. And we also offer a number of generic connectors too. So JDBC driver-based connection or various API connections. So the benefit of that is it really coming with one platform is a very comprehensive and very powerful integration capability that truly can connect to any data source that you might need to connect it to.
Yeah, and I can definitely echo that. I think, like I said, 2008. Since then, we've been working with Jedox, and so far we have yet to find a data source that we weren't able to integrate. So if you can find one, then I'll buy you a beer.
Still searching myself.
Excellent. All right. The next one, I suppose, might be good for you, Leo. So the bill of materials is typically held in your ERP system. So why would you replicate the bill of materials as we've just seen in the planning system?
So with the ERP system, as for what we've experienced in the past, it's basically a recipe for production. But the advantage of putting it into Jedox is what I showed before. So we can actually have an input of our sales article and directly calculate the impact for the procurement article. And that's something we have not experienced in any ERP so far. So that's the big advantages of putting it into Jedox.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So I reckon, looking at the time, we've got time for one more. I think this one's probably be good. Probably lots of people will have a similar question in their mind. I'll take it if that's all right, but please feel free to add to it, Jack and Leo. So the question is, this all sounds very complex. Surely an implementation like this will take years. So the clear answer I can give to that is it depends, which is your typical consultant answer. But no, so it definitely won't take years. That is for sure. So what we have seen is Jedox is a solution which actually can be implemented very quickly. Typically, the data integration side of things can be complicated and can prolong projects. That's why, as Jack said, the great strength of Jedox when it comes to data integration and actually also export then to downstream processes, by the way, which might be worth mentioning, is a great strength. So that will ensure that part of the project won't take long and therefore won't be expensive. Then typically our projects, we are talking a matter of a couple of months usually. Obviously, if you want to implement several of those modules that we've seen on the slides previously, obviously, if you take a lot of modules on at one time, then obviously it can take a little bit longer. But typically, these projects are done in a matter of months, and you get very, very quick results and first prototypes that you can work with in a very short space of time. So unlike typical IT implementations, which can unfortunately take years, and we have seen that, like ERP implementations and other tools, Jedox tends to be very, very quick. So we're definitely talking months and a few months at that. I don't know. Do you want to add to that, Jack?
Yeah, no. Add just to that. I mean, I think a big benefit of having such an adaptable, scalable platform is being able for customers to take advantage of BDG1, touched on a little bit earlier, and bringing your best practices and your subject matter expertise into those customers and giving them really good starting place that they can get up and running with quite quickly, but also then discuss and add more value to them with specific requirements or nuances in their process or to do with their specific business model. I think that really reflects how customers you can approach implementing Jedox as a solution. It's not something that you need to take everything together, big implementation, as you say. You can really start with where the biggest pain you have currently in the process. You can leverage best practices, as we've touched on before, and get a lot of value very quickly in the platform.
Absolutely. Right, I think that's all we've got time for today, as they say. So, like I said, we will get back around to you with other questions or for the other questions. All that's left to say is thank you very much for your time and attention today. We hope that you were able to shed some light on this topic. And thank you very much.
Thank you.